Hi everyone, it's Stephanie here with a video for My Favorite Things. In today's episode of MFTv, we are going to be using the Brick Wall Cover-Up, and we are going to be using it to do some dry embossing on our cardstock. I really love the look of dry embossing. It just adds some really great subtle detail to a cardstock panel, and you can do it really easily with your dies. So you can get multi-uses out of your dies because you don't only have to use them for die cutting, you can also use them for embossing. So for my embossing, I'm using my Big Shot. So I'm just opening up the top tab so that I have one of the tabs open. And I'm going to place my cutting mat directly on top there. Then I'm going to put my rubber mat. This is what we're going to use to emboss the detail into the cardstock without actually cutting it. Then I'm going to place my cardstock piece directly onto that rubber mat and take my die and put it face down onto the cardstock piece. And this is going to make sure that the pattern in the die embosses into the paper but doesn't actually cut it. And then to finish off the sandwich, I just put my top plate on top, and then I'm going to use some big muscles here and run that through my die cut machine. It is a little bit tight when you run it through just because you have a lot of material going through, but just push through and you're going to end up with this really awesome embossed detail. So you can see that this didn't cut through, but it gave me a super deep etched embossed detail, and I have this really cool brick background. I love the look of brick detail on my card designs. I use it a lot, and I just think that it adds such a cool look to any kind of card design. There are so many different things that you can do with brick detail, and I really love the different effects that you can create with it. So for this panel here that we've dry embossed the brick detail on, I want to add a little bit of color, just gray color, just to kind of darken up the bricks a tiny bit, just so they're not super stark white. So I'm just taking an ink blending tool and the Grout Gray Premium Dye Ink, and I'm just very lightly running this across the top of the brick. And what's going to happen is you're going to leave that gray color on the actual brick part, and the inner part where the grout would be is going to stay more of a white color. So it's just going to kind of help accentuate those bricks in that pattern. So you can kind of see there it's a little bit deeper, and you can really see the outline of the bricks a little bit more than we could before we added that gray ink. Now the idea I had for the card when I decided what I wanted to do for the background and do the embossed brick was to make it look like a graffiti wall. I really love the look of spray paint and any type of art against a brick wall. So I thought it would be fun to kind of try and mimic that with my stamps. So I'm just taking the Distress Pattern stamp set. This is one of my favorites for adding any kind of like art detail to a background because it has some really great different distressed looks to it. It has this great swipe here that I'm going to add on. Kind of looks like I took a paintbrush and ran it straight down the wall. So it just kind of works perfectly for the idea I had in my head to create this fun, really colorful and paint splattered looking wall. So I'm just going to take two ink colors here. I have Summer Splash and Limelight. These are two of my favorites when doing any kind of stamping with a Distress Pattern stamp set, just because they're really bright and they really stand out and they're nice and bold on the card design. So I stamped the two Summer Splash ones first and kind of put one longer than the other. And then I'm going to take the Limelight ink and I'm going to stamp two more of these. I'm stamped one directly in between, so you get that really nice variation where the ink overlaps the other ink. And then I'm going to stamp the second one here kind of over to the right hand side of this panel just to kind of separate it from the other two and fill up this wall with this fun bright color. So now that I have the stripe pattern done there, I'm going to go ahead and grab the big, bold, splotchy type stamps that kind of looks like a big splash of paint on the wall. And I'm using orange fizz ink to do this one. I really wanted to add a nice, bold, bright color, but not too bright. I didn't want it to overpower the green and the blue. So what I'm doing is I'm stamping this directly onto this wall here, and I'm just kind of overlapping it with the green and blue stamping that we've already done. And you can see here when I stamp this big splatter that you get that white grout brick detail around each brick. I absolutely love this look. I think it looks so neat, and you can achieve this because we did that dry embossing first. So it makes it so that the ink sticks onto the top area where the brick is raised, but it doesn't go into the area where in between each brick where, like I said before, the grout would actually be. So it really makes it look that much more realistic and like it's actually a brick wall. So now I'm just kind of going through and I'm taking all three of the colors that I started out with. I have the green, the blue, and the orange. And I'm just taking all of the different little stamps that come in the stamp set and I'm stamping a bunch of different splatters all over the wall. I decided once I did those three colors I needed a little bit more color. I wanted just to add a tiny pop of pink. So I took my Ripe Raspberry Premium Dye Ink and I'm just doing some more stamping with those same stamps that I use for all the other splatters. And I'm just kind of stamping it all around where I've already stamped just to kind of fill it up and get it to a point that I like it. Now I didn't want the panel to be the same size as my card base, so what I did is I took it and cut it down with the Stitch Rectangle Dynamics. This is the largest rectangle. And then I took a piece of Summer Splash ink and I cut it just slightly larger so that I can use it for a mat. I really like that I pulled a color from the paint splatter that we put on the front piece here, but not one of the really bold colors that you are really noticing, especially that orange. I wanted to take one of the colors that was a little bit less noticeable to really add another pop of color to this card. I adhered the finished panel to a top folding grout gray card base, and now we're going to go ahead and add a sentiment on here. So to create the sentiment, I just used the Stitched Alphabet Dynamics die set, and I cut out the word hi, and I'm just going to adhere this right onto the brick wall. So I'm just using some liquid glue just because these are kind of tiny and it's hard to use a tape runner. And I'm going to adhere them onto the card right over top of the big, large orange splatter that we have in the top left corner of the card. I really want the letters to be able to stand out a little bit just because they are white, so if I put them anywhere else in this panel, they're going to kind of blend in with the rest of the brick wall. So I liked the idea of putting them here because they really pop against that orange color that's behind them. And then once I have those adhered, I'm just going to add some clear sequins just because this is kind of flat. It's super busy looking because it's really bright and colorful, but I still wanted a little bit more dimension on the finished card. So I decided to put some clear sequins. I apologize for my big head there and my glasses, but I was leaning in to make sure that I got the stickles right in the center of those sequins, and then that's going to finish off the sequins. And then I'm going to do one more thing that I like to do with this kind of card design because it is kind of messy looking and we have this, paint splattery type look going. I wanted to add some of the stickles to the paint splatter as well. So what I'm doing is I'm just putting it right on my finger and I'm just kind of dabbing it off on my work surface and I'm just swiping it down those paint swipes that I have in the background. So it's just a great way to kind of add a little bit of sparkly fun to that painted background without having it super noticeable because we're just putting a tiny bit on at a time. And then once I have that done, the card's done, and we have this really fun, dry embossed, paint splattery type wall effect. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this card that we created today. And if you would like a chance to win the brick cover-up background that I used on today's card, please leave a comment down below and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we will draw one random winner and announce it next week in next week's episode of MFTv. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.